Welcome back to Activated Mornings. This morning, the time is 8:11 here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'd just like to remind our listeners that the Searchlight Midweek is online. Here are the leading stories. Hostile householders putting dent in census progress. Byra Village welcomes the country's latest centenarian. Why is that giving me problems? Patients owe $12 million to Milton Cato Memorial Hospital. Successful students in 2023 exams to receive $500 award. PM Gonzal visits $620 million port project. Man shot, killed in Gibson Corner. Form 2 dropout remanded for threatening to stab deputy principal. Prime the Pump discusses perception and reality. Vinci Heat in Group F of World Cup qualifiers. More sports, Kitchen Corner. Remember to check out our video stories on YouTube and download the free Searchlight app to access our e-paper and get breaking news and updates. Searchlight, journalism you can trust. Check us out online or at searchlight.vc. So this morning here in Activated Mornings, for this segment, we're going to be discussing an article published in Searchlight that headlines Government Moving Away from Paper. And it reads, St. Vincent and the Grenadines will be the third Caribbean country to implement the electronic single window for trade facilitation, the eSwift, for a commencement date set for 2026. And the move away from paper to digital is predicted as one of the challenges that will arise during the project's rollout. eSwift is a digital platform used to automate trade procedures being done under the Digital Transformation Project and is expected to improve ease of doing business for the import and export of goods in and out of the country. In addition to ensuring higher compliance and transparency, in November 2023, the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines signed a contract with the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, the UNCTAD, for the implementation of the eSwift. And the UNCTAD representatives visited St. Vincent this week to meet with stakeholders in both the public and private sector to get feedback and develop a detailed plan to guide the implementation of the project. Lead advisor for the eSwift implementation, Terence Leonard, met with the media at the Inland Revenue Department on Monday, January 29th, to discuss the intricacies of the platform. The single window for trade, we are looking at extending that automated system to incorporate all government agencies are involved in the trade supply chain, which engages the public, whether it is a receipt of an application or for processing of any license or document involved in international trade. These agencies would be, instead of physically transiting from agency to agency to get whatever license or declaration process, the trading public will process, clear, or reject the application, Leonard explained. The project implementation is expected to be done in a phased approach before the final testing phase. Now, if the listeners remember, I did relate a story where I had to go to the port, then to bring in a tabletop, and I needed a license. And from there, I had to go to Service Commissions. I don't know if that is exactly Service Commission, but it was the Office of Service Commissions, who then sent me to Income Tax to receive a stamp to take back to Service Commission, to go to the customs, to then go back to the port for something simple as a tabletop. And I always said that the Digital Transformation Project will get rid of all of these tedious processes in dealing with simple things. And I know things take time. It's unfortunate that we have to wait until 2026, but I do applaud any form of convenience being introduced to us as Vincentians. I don't know if you had something to say.
Yeah, well, I'm in agreement with you. Anything that would allow me to be able to sit down in the comfort of my own home and do whatever transaction or uploading of documents, etc. Um, it doesn't even necessarily have to be within working times, but at my convenience, I am all for these type of things. Moving away from a paperless society. Sometimes even when you go to clear things at the customs, and I'm always there like, why do I have to have so much paper? I'm carrying back home so much paper, and it's a case where in the end, it just goes in the garbage. So anything that allows us to be a little bit more environmentally conscious in terms of moving from paperless, also the convenience of being able to do things within my own time, within my own schedule. I am all for it. So kudos to the government. As Ari has indicated, yes, 2026 may seem far away, but I suppose to me it's better late than never. And yeah, I'm all for it. All for it.
So Leonard had said that the first priority is the establishment of a legislative framework to govern eSwift, noting that there must be a model act to focus specifically on the single window. The implementation of eSwift is expected to cost the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines US $2,338,000, $338,400. The system is expected to be fully implemented by June 2026.
One of the things too, though, Ari, you have to look at is the education aspect of it, because there are some persons who are so used to, and I kind of want to say it's more the older generation, because I think for some of us as younger folks, well, maybe I find myself in a middle bracket where certain things I'm not always as receptive of. But I think the education aspect also has to play a part in this in terms of allowing persons to see the benefit of the transition. Many of us already have smartphones, so why not utilize them for in a way in which they were intended? But I think because when I think of this situation, I even think of the distribution of ATM cards that were handed out. And sometimes for us as younger folks who have been using ATM cards since forever, we go in and it's a very simple process to it. It's a, you enter, we don't even wait for the prompts on the ATM machine. We just go ahead and do our business, and we just go right ahead. But then I do recognize the challenges for some persons, especially older folks, in using the ATMs. Also, I get the impression that sometimes they are also afraid to ask how to go about it, because some persons they may feel embarrassed about it. So I think, and I know, so I do my business with Bank of St. Vincent, so I can only speak to Bank of St. Vincent. But I noticed that they have, or at one point in time, they even had someone stationed within the ATM machine to allow persons to know, or to be there to help persons learn how to use the ATM cards, or to use the cards within the machine. So even sometimes, and these are the things, as we transition from a paperless society to what we see happening in more modernized or more developed countries, we have to also tie in the education aspect of things to help persons with this, well, hopefully seamless transition. So,
well, I'm a bit confused with this, is I don't understand why it would cost the government any money to implement eSwift as it's part of the digital transformation project, and I'm pretty sure the digital transformation project is funded by one of those. I can't remember if it's CDB, but it's a regional project, and it doesn't receive its funding from the government. So I'm wondering, why would this cost the government US $2 million? But
well, it might be something with administrative costs, because sometimes some of these projects don't necessarily take care of everything. So it could be something like administrative costs. It could be if they have their own office, the rental space for the office, etc. So those things might be borne by the government.
Cool. Someone asked on the live, are we moving to a cashless society as well? I'd hope so.
Well, we've started. I think we've started. There are many of us with small businesses who I still prefer not to have to receive cash. I just want you to do that direct deposit. But again, not everybody has necessarily signed up for online banking and those sort of things. And even for me, when I was in Trinidad, it took me a while to, again, after spending 3 years of just swiping a card for everything, to have to move back home. And when I moved back home, having to pay cash for just about everything, it took me a while to transition in that regard, So I think it's slowly getting there. And maybe us as the children have to teach our parents why it is that this might be easier and it might be safer. But I think it's a work in progress.
I am just wondering how long would it really take? Because we in St. Vincent we're still at the you need to sign receipt for when you use your card. Some people even ask you to show ID when you use your card. Then it's the lines upon lines for the ATMs. Somebody like me who's at Gecko. Gecko has two ATMs and they utilize the Bank of SVG ATMs. But if you don't want the charge from the Bank of SVG ATMs, it's usually a long line at both Gecko ATMs to just withdraw some money. And then I think it was Crystal. Yeah, it was Crystal and we were speaking about how far apart the ATMs are and how inconvenient it could be. Especially that Bank of SVG ATM at Stony Grove, massive Stony Grove that always seem to have some sort of problems, either temporary out of order, either don't have any cash, always seem to have some form of problems. But the ATMs are very much centralized.
I think one of the things for me is the deposit, because I could only, well, as far as I know, it's only one branch that I could deposit at in Kingstown. I'm not sure if it's two, but I tend to utilize one. And I think I would have preferred if there was a bit of a decentralization for cash deposits, but I think maybe there is a reason why that is the case, But I don't know. It's just, yeah, and I think for me, one of the things for me always has been the length of time people spend in the ATMs. I legit think that people spend, or some persons spend too long in the ATM machines. And again, as I said, it's maybe because they're not as used to it, or they think that they have to wait on the prompt, etc., in order to start the transaction. But I don't know. I don't know. One of the things too that could grind me is like when it's close to minutes to one and everybody's there antsy because somebody's in there taking the sweet time. But I really do, as much as possible, I try not to have to go to the ATM unless I really need to. And as I said, for small businesses, you have that facility to be able to do transactions, direct deposits to your account. So for those who have it, let's try to be able to cut down on the ATM lines by using the other facilities that are available in terms of especially online banking. To pay your bills, you don't always have to go to let's say Vilnec Flow, etc. You can sign up and pay those bills online. I do recognize though that there have been some persons who said for them they feel safer, or it's more sure for them standing in a line and seeing that they get a receipt to say that they have paid. But if you have online banking, you would be able to see the transactions in terms of when you've made a payment, let's say to Flow, to Digicel, to CWSA, you would see it there in your bank statement. So I think persons probably just need to get on board with it. You have to be able to trust the process in terms of, yes, the bank, that you can have transactions done through the bank, through the online portal. And, just try to move away from it, because really and truly, we have too many persons standing up in lines, too many persons walking around with cash and significant amounts of cash on them in person, so it's a mindset, it's a mindset where we have to do the adjustment, recognize that technology is safe. And if you have a query, you can always look back at your statements or go into the bank with your query and your concerns. So again, it goes back to a bit of education.
What I would really hope is that we would move away from the tedious your deposits being physically deposited when you use the ATM to electronically deposited. I want when I make my deposit, the cash is in my account immediately. And usually when I have to deposit and you have to wait until
it clears
the next day, or sometimes if you go at 2, the teller's already off, so you know for sure you're not seeing that money in your account until the following day. If somebody makes a wire transfer, sometimes that it take if it's done on a Friday, it takes you're not going to see that money until maybe a Monday or a Tuesday.
I think the thing is the bank themselves have to do their internal checks. They have to do their cross checking. I know for us when it happens, we're not always happy with it, but I guess for me, I've just programmed myself to know that okay, I'm not going to see it directly at the same time. What it is that I've always questioned though is if we had a bigger society in terms of our population size or the banking population was bigger, how would the banks have mitigated this particular issue? Because to me, it still seems like it's an individual within the bank who has to double check and cross check these particular transactions. But I think I'm curious in terms of knowing how bigger countries handle this particular situation.
Okay, and what's going on? Okay, yeah, and asks how about receiving a bounce check?
Right. And well, I don't know. The former banker isn't with us today to let us know how the bank tends to deal with this, especially if it's a deposit that is made through the ATM. So I can't speak on that. I don't know.
Let's see, there's a bunch of excuses. There's excuses every way you turn is excuses because I don't understand how in countries where there's a larger population and every corner you're able to do this in ATMs, you're able to just deposit your money, it pops up in your account right away. They're able to tell whether or not check is is valid or not. And I don't even think they usually take check deposits like that. I think the check deposits usually have to be done by a teller. But the cash deposit,
you can do. Okay, explain yourself, because go ahead.
Have you done check deposits in a foreign country?
No, not in a foreign
That's
country.
what I'm saying.
Oh, you didn't say foreign country. I thought you meant locally.
Anyways, I don't understand how you're able to do all of that, and then yet here in St. Vincent, you have to come back to. Let me try and make this deposit, and hopefully it's in my account before 2. Or if the teller's not there, then how to look for that the next day. It's very tedious, especially with the size of lines when you go into the banks. Yesterday I went into the bank to do something simple and saw the lines, and I was like, yeah, nah, I'm not doing that today. I really think a lot of it is unnecessary, and then you'll hear the excuses. Oh, maybe somebody has to double check, or maybe we have to wait until the teller makes the deposit. Why is it that it happens here, but in the countries where there are larger populations, they don't have these problems? And it's not a 1 or 2 ATMs. There's ATMs on every corner. So I still struggle to understand a lot of the excuses that we form and we accept as the norm. I do think that we could be further along, but I get already strayed too far from the topic. I am just looking forward to eSwift being implemented. The only confusion for me was I thought that everything was going to be borne by the digital transformation project, but I guess that is not the case. We would have known this if the budget had went on long enough to have a debate. And we have roughly a minute left. I guess we could touch on briefly the drought. CDPM warns of likely drought in SVG over the next few months, according to St. Vincent Times. The Caribbean Drought and Precipitation Monitoring Network has issued a warning for drought conditions in St. Vincent and the surrounding region this year. The recent published Caribbean Drought Bulletin provides a comprehensive overview of the anticipated precipitation patterns throughout the initial half of 2024. According to the long-term drought forecast, as of May 2024, there is a possibility of drought developing or persisting in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The drought is also expected to impact neighboring nations such as Belize, Cuba, French Guiana, parts of Guyana, and Tobago. According to the monthly climate report from the SVG Met Office, the rainfall forecast for the first quarter of the year indicates a probability of below average precipitation. This could lead to drought conditions across the country in the coming months. Given the high probability of drought conditions in the next month, it is strongly recommended that the CWSA closely monitor the water situation and encourage the people to practice water conservation. Prompt reporting and rapid repair of any pipe leaks is essential to prevent wastage. In order to guarantee food security, farmers are highly recommended to make arrangements to implement conservation and irrigation techniques. It should be taken into consideration to cultivate crops that are more resistant during this time. According to SVG Met, both daytime and nighttime temperatures are forecasted to be higher than normal.
Another hot year predicting, maybe. There's one thing when I read that article though. So I know that in the Grenadines, they have their own methods of water, well, quote unquote, harvesting. In terms of they have tanks, etc. And I think maybe for those of us on mainland, we tend to take this for granted, right? We rely on CWSA a lot for our water supply. And I'm putting myself here in this category because I am one of those persons, right? I tend to believe that for us on mainland, we don't think about this lack of water issue enough, right? So the possibility of there being a drought or shortage of water, right? We have to ask ourselves the question, how many of us have tanks? How many of us have an alternative or a backup source of water should something happen? I've always thought, well, I don't know how exactly it's done. I think it's done in Beckley. Somebody could always clarify if it's not so. But, I think that there are some houses that are built on top of a tank itself. And for us on mainland, sometimes I wonder, how is it that we never really thought about doing something similar for ourselves, or investing in a water tank? Every time I have to think about what we went through that week in particular, right after the volcanic eruptions, that inconvenience of not having water. And the thing of it is that for some of us where we live, we don't have issues with the lack of water, So, I mean, for me, that particular week was just stress. I never realized the importance, which is probably kind of weird to say, never realized how much I depended on having water flowing through my taps, being able to flush the toilet consistently, I didn't stop and think about that. And I always tell people that I think my moods were affected by by when water was available. So when water came through the pipes, I was in a good mood. When we didn't have any water, don't try to talk to me, But that's it. That's the thing, we are going through, and we have to recognize that climate change is real. We recognize that last year we had the place was extremely hot. I can't remember if last year there was a ration of water. I don't think so. I think it happened the year before, but not necessarily last year, right? But in any event, water rationing does take place occasionally when the tanks or the reservoirs are low. But for us as homeowners or as individuals, we really and truly do have to stop and think, what methods or what alternatives do we have in place in the event that something goes wrong with the CWS system, or tanks are low and they can't be able to provide and we have to ration, etc. It's just something for us to stop and think about.
All right, good points. The time is now 8:34. We're gonna have to break here, and we'll be back with activated mornings after these messages.